3 months ago, I was living in a $4.2 million house in California with my wife and kids. Today, I hold a letter that reveals my entire life has been a lie, and that the woman who destroyed me may have unknowingly saved me. My name is Fletcher Morrison. I'm 47. Until recently, I worked as a commercial insurance adjuster in Pasadena, helping people recover from disasters. I had what most would call the American dream: a beautiful wife, Cordelia, whom I'd been married to for 18 years, and twin children, Quinlan and Brenna, 16 and 14, who were brilliant and my world. Our home, perched in the hills, overlooked the city like a glittering carpet. I believed I knew exactly who I was. I was Fletcher Morrison, son of Wifford Morrison, a quiet librarian who raised me alone after my father died in a car accident when I was 12. My father had been a regular man, worked in construction, and left my mother to raise me on a librarian's salary. We didn't have much growing up in Ohio, but my mother made sure I had everything I needed. She remembered birthdays, organized photo albums, and ensured I stayed on track with school and life. Cordelia was my high school sweetheart. We met when I was 17, she was 16, and we fell in love completely. Ambitious and striking, she could command attention effortlessly. After college, she went into real estate and excelled. Together, we built our life gradually, step by step. The children arrived, we moved to California, bought the dream home, and enrolled them in private schools. Quinlan, tall and athletic like his grandfather, excelled in basketball and was already being scouted by colleges. Brenna, our artist, had a rare eye for the world that made you see things differently. For 47 years, this was my story. Family man, insurance adjuster, former Ohio kid who succeeded in California. I never doubted it. Then, everything began to unravel. It started 18 months ago with small signs. Cordelia began taking phone calls outside, coming home later claiming work obligations. Her warmth toward me faded, replaced by a distant scrutiny, and our children noticed. Quinlan asked why his mother seemed angry. Brenna withdrew into darker drawings of seemingly broken families. I assumed it was stress, a phase, or midlife changes. I tried reconnecting with her, date nights, conversations, but nothing worked. My efforts only seemed to increase her distance. Then came the divorce papers. They were accompanied by allegations that shattered my sense of self. According to her lawyer, I was a gambling addict, hiding massive debts, financially reckless, and unfit for custody. Bank statements, casino receipts, witness statements. None of it true, yet all documented. The courtroom was a nightmare. Lawyers spoke of me like a criminal, while my own wife would not meet my gaze. When the judge awarded her the house, primary custody, and my business assets, I felt broken. The worst moment came outside the courthouse. Cordelia smiled, a cold, satisfied expression, and whispered, "You'll never see Quinlan and Brenna again. I'm moving them to Portland next month, and you don't have the money to stop me." That's when I realized this wasn't just a failing marriage. It was deliberate and calculated. Within 6 weeks, I lost my house, children, and even my insurance license due to fabricated financial misconduct claims. I had nowhere to go but back to Ohio, to my mother's house that had been empty since her death 2 years earlier. I packed what remained of my life into a Honda Civic and drove 1,200 miles back to a place I hadn't lived since I was 18. That's where my story truly begins. The drive from California to Ohio took 3 days, each mile feeling like a journey back through time. When I arrived at my mother's house on Maple Street in Akron, it was unchanged from the day of her funeral. A small, neat 1960s ranch with white siding, black shutters, a front porch just big enough for 2 chairs, and a small table where she used to sit with her tea and a library book. I sat in the car for a long time before stepping inside. Biff was supposed to be temporary, a place to regroup while I figured out how to rebuild my life. But sitting there in that modest house, I couldn't help thinking about how far I'd fallen. 3 months ago, I could see downtown Los Angeles from my bedroom window. Now, I was staring at Mrs. Patterson's garden gnomes across the street. My mother, Wyford Morrison, had lived in this house for 35 years. She bought it when I was 12, shortly after my father died, using his life insurance and the small savings they had managed to gather. It was a decision driven by hope more than logic. A single mother with a librarian's salary, taking on a mortgage because she wanted her son to have a backyard and his own room. Mom was quietly strong. She never remarried or dated after my father's death, instead dedicating herself to raising me and her work at the downtown Akron Public Library. Every morning, she made breakfast, packed my lunch, and walked 6 blocks to work, carrying her own brown paper bag. Evenings, she returned with stacks of books, some for work, some for pleasure, some she thought I might enjoy. She had a way of making our modest life feel full. We didn't have money for vacations, but she created adventures in our backyard, camping under the stars and sharing stories about constellations with hot chocolate in hand. When I became interested in model airplanes, she worked extra hours to buy kits and helped me paint the details, even though her eyesight wasn't great. What I remember most about her was her quiet certainty. She always knew our finances, deadlines, and my needs before I did. For a woman widowed young and raising a child alone, she never seemed overwhelmed. She handled everything with calm competence, which only became clear to me after I became a parent myself. Somehow, we always had just enough, never plenty, never desperate. School clothes, car repairs, college tuition. She made it happen without explaining how. Once in my 20s, I asked her how she did it. She smiled and said, "You find a way when someone you love depends on you. That's what parents do." Now, unlocking the front door for the first time since her funeral, I could smell her presence everywhere. Lavender soap mixed with old books, a scent that had always meant home. The furniture was exactly as she left it. Her reading glasses rested on the end table by her favorite chair. The mystery novel she'd been reading lay open on the coffee table, bookmark in place. Walking through those rooms, I felt the weight of everything I'd lost. My children 1,000 miles away, probably being told terrible things about me. My wife a stranger who seemed to despise me. My career and reputation in ruins. My bank account empty. Yet in my mother's living room, surrounded by her books, photographs, and the quiet dignity of the life she'd built, I made a decision. This house was one thing Cordelia's lawyers couldn't take from me. It was mine, free and clear, a gift from a woman who had spent her life making sure I had something solid. I would renovate it, sell it, and use the money to fight for my children. It seemed like a sound plan. I had no idea my mother had left me something far more valuable than real estate. The divorce proceedings began 8 months after Cordelia asked for some space. I should have anticipated it, but I still hoped we could repair our marriage. I didn't realize it was about something much darker. I'll never forget the morning the papers were served. I was preparing for work, coffee, shower, a quick goodbye to Cordelia, though she had barely acknowledged me for months. At 7:30, the doorbell rang. A process server handed me an envelope that would shatter my life. The petition wasn't just for divorce. It demanded everything. Full custody of Quinlan and Brena, the house, my business assets, and retirement accounts. But the allegations were what froze me. According to the documents, I was a compulsive gambler hiding massive debts, stealing from client accounts, financially reckless, emotionally unstable, and dangerous to my children. None of it was true. I had maybe bought 5 lottery tickets in my life, never entered a casino, and never played poker with friends. My insurance practice was built on trust. Every account was clean, every penny accounted for. Yet somehow, Cordelia's attorney had documentation. That evening, I confronted her as she packed our bedroom with mechanical efficiency. "Cordelia, what the hell is this?" I asked, hands shaking, holding the divorce papers. "Gambling addiction? Theft. You know none of this is true." She didn't even look up from folding her clothes. I know what I know, Fletcher. The bank statements don't lie. What bank statements? Show me. That's when she finally faced me, and I saw something in her eyes I'd never seen before. Not anger or hurt, but cold calculation. She looked like a complete stranger. "You're not the man I married," she said quietly. "Maybe you never were." The next 6 weeks became a blur of legal meetings, document reviews, and watching my life get dissected by strangers. Cordelia's lawyer, a sharp woman named Patricia Voss, presented evidence that seemed impossible to fake. Bank statements showing withdrawals I hadn't made, casino receipts with my signature from places I'd never visited, credit card charges for online gambling sites I'd never heard of. My own lawyer, Robert Chen, who I had trusted for business contracts, kept shaking his head. "Fletcher, I have to ask, any of this real? If there are debts you've hidden, we need to know to work on damage control." "Rob, I swear on my children's lives, I've never gambled anything more than a church raffle ticket. Someone is setting me up. I don't know how or why," I told him. But the evidence kept coming. Witness statements claiming I borrowed money and never repaid it. A coworker claiming he saw me betting on my phone at lunch. Even my neighbor Jerry Holbrook signing an affidavit saying I'd become erratic and desperate over the past year. The worst part was seeing my kids through it. Quinlan began avoiding me, spending more time at friends' houses, giving one-word answers when I asked him about school or basketball. Brina still hugged me at night, but confusion clouded her eyes as she tried to reconcile the father she knew with the man being described. But custody evaluation was humiliating. Dr. Martinez, a court-appointed psychologist, spent 3 hours questioning me about mental health, my relationship with the children, and financial habits. Professional but distant, she clearly had read Cordelia's accusations in advance. "Mr. Morrison, addiction often involves denial. Many gambling addicts hide their behavior from family," she said. "Doctor, I'm not in denial. I'm not an addict. I'm telling the truth," I replied. She took notes to include in her report. The final hearing was scheduled for a Tuesday in November. I drove to the courthouse that morning, knowing I was likely to lose my children, but still hoping someone would see through the deception. The courtroom was sterile and cold. Nothing like the movies. Judge Patricia Winters, in her 60s, looked like she had seen every form of family destruction and was no longer surprised by any of it. Cordelia's lawyer presented her case with precision. Bank records, witness statements, expert testimony about gambling addiction and its impact on families. They painted me as a man living a double life, stealing from clients, lying to everyone who trusted him. My lawyer did his best with what we had. Basically, my word against mountains of documentation. He pointed out inconsistencies, questioned timing of transactions, and argued that the evidence was circumstantial. It wasn't enough. Judge Winters awarded Cordelia primary custody, the house, and most of our assets. I received supervised visitation every other weekend, pending completion of a gambling treatment program and financial counseling. In the parking lot afterward, Cordelia caught up to me. Smiling, she delivered the final blow. "You'll never see Quinlan and Brenna again. I'm moving them to Portland next month, and you don't have the money to fight me anymore." That night, sitting in my empty apartment, I tried to comprehend how my life had become unrecognizable in less than a year. Returning to my mother's house was like stepping into a time capsule. Everything remained as she had left it. Her coffee mug in the dish drainer, her reading glasses on the end table, her slippers neatly by the bed. For the first few weeks, I barely left the couch. Every morning I woke hoping it was a nightmare, that I would open my eyes in California, with Cordelia beside me, and the kids down the hall. Instead, I saw the water stain on Mom's ceiling, and remembered my old life was gone, probably forever. Depression hit hard. Some days, I couldn't even shower or make coffee. I lay staring at the ceiling, thinking about Quinlan and Brenna, wondering what they were being told about me. Were they worried? Did they believe the lies about gambling and theft? After a month, something inside me snapped. Perhaps it was my mother's voice in my head, reminding me that problems don't solve themselves. Maybe it was basic survival instinct. I realized that if I wanted any chance of getting my children back, I needed resources, and the only asset I had left was this house. It needed work. Mom had maintained it well into her 70s, but some things were beginning to show wear. The kitchen cabinets needed refinishing, the bathroom required an upgrade, and the entire house could use a fresh coat of paint. If I was going to sell it for enough to fund a legal fight, it had to look its best. I threw myself into the renovation with everything I had. I stripped wallpaper, sanded floors, painted every wall. Working with my hands felt good after months of sitting in law offices, feeling powerless. Each nail I hammered and wall I painted felt like a small act of reclaiming control from those who had tried to destroy me. The basement was the last part of the house I tackled. Mom had used it mostly for storage, and it was packed with decades of collected things. Boxes of Christmas ornaments, old photo albums, and my elementary school projects she'd kept for reasons only she'd understand. Sorting through her belongings was emotional, but comforting. It reminded me who I was, and the values she had raised me with. Honesty, hard work, and integrity. That's when I noticed something strange near the furnace. The old oil furnace had been converted to gas years ago, but never moved from its spot. Yet the concrete floor around it looked different. There were fresh-looking scratches, and the dust pattern seemed off. It looked like the furnace had been moved recently, which was impossible. Mom had been gone for 2 years, and before that, she was too frail to move anything that heavy. The marks were there, though, scratches, scuffs, and disturbed dust. It took me nearly an entire afternoon to figure out how to move it. I disconnected the gas line, terrified I'd blow myself up, and used a dolly and leverage to slide it about 3 feet from the wall. My back was screaming, but it was worth it. Behind the furnace, set into the concrete wall at shoulder height, was a small safe I'd never seen before. It was an old-style combination safe, maybe 18 inches square, painted the same gray as the wall, so it blended in. The metal was worn smooth, as if it had been opened countless times. There was no brand name, nothing to show how old it was or where it came from. I stared at it for a long time, my mind racing. How long had it been there? Why had Mom never mentioned it? What could be so important that she'd hide it behind a furnace? The dial ran from 0 to 99. 10,000 possible combinations. It could take forever to guess. Then I remembered something. Every year on my birthday, March 15th, she'd call me at exactly 7:23 a.m., saying it was the precise moment I was born. That detail stuck with me. March 15th, 1977, 031577. My hands trembled as I turned the dial. Right to 03, left to 15, right to 77. For a few seconds. Nothing happened. Then I heard a faint click, and the heavy door swung open. What I found inside changed everything I thought I knew. The safe was deeper than it looked and packed full. The first thing I saw was cash, more than I'd ever seen in one place. Stacks of $100 bills, bound by rubber bands, some old and yellowed, others crisp and new. I counted. $847,000, exactly. Beneath the money were documents, multiple driver's licenses, each with my mother's photo, but under different names. Isabella Reyes from New Mexico, Maria Santos from Arizona, Catherine Walsh from Nevada. The photos showed her at different ages, but it was unmistakably her. The same face, though younger and sharper, with a watchful expression I'd never noticed when she was alive. There were matching social security cards, birth certificates, even a passport for Isabella Reyes, dated 1988. All looked authentic, not fake. My mother, Wilfred Morrison, had apparently lived under multiple identities for decades. At the bottom of the safe was a sealed envelope with my name on it. written in her familiar handwriting, just Fletcher, the same way she'd signed birthday cards and grocery notes. I sat on the basement floor and tore it open. Inside were 3 handwritten pages. The first line made my blood run cold. "My dearest Fletcher, if you're reading this, they've finally found you, and I'm no longer here to protect you." The letter shattered everything I believed about my past. Your real name is Fletcher Castellano. Your father didn't die in a car accident when you were 12. His name was Vincent Castellano, and he was murdered by the Torino crime family in Chicago on September 18, 1989. I witnessed his murder because I was supposed to die with him. Instead, I ran. I took you and disappeared. 3 months later, I testified before a federal grand jury against the men who killed your father. I had to stop reading. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely hold the paper. Vincent Castellano, not Vincent Morrison, the construction worker killed in an accident, but a man murdered by the mob. And my mother hadn't just been a widow. She'd been a federal witness. We entered the Witness Protection Program in January 1990. I became Wilfred Morrison. You became Fletcher Morrison. We moved to Akron, Ohio to start over. The government provided new identities, a modest settlement, to help us establish our lives, and the promise that we would remain safe as long as we never contacted anyone from our past or revealed who we truly were. Everything began to make sense. How my mother always seemed to have just enough money, despite her librarian salary. Her reluctance to discuss our life before Ohio. A lessons she instilled: never trust strangers too quickly, keep personal information private, stay aware of your surroundings. I had assumed she was protective. She was keeping us alive. The money in the safe was the remainder of the government settlement, plus what she had saved over the years by living carefully. But there was more, something she had discovered too late to warn me about. My heart pounded as I read. "I hired private investigators to watch you in California starting 3 years ago. Not because I doubted you, but because I had heard rumors that people were asking questions about the Castellano family again. What they discovered broke my heart. Your wife, Cordelia, has been working with people who have been searching for us for decades. They found you first and used her to get close to you." The room spun. Cordelia, my high school sweetheart and mother of my children, had been involved with the people responsible for my father's death. I didn't know if she understood the full extent or if she had been manipulated like me. The divorce, the false gambling evidence, it had all been planned to break me financially and emotionally, forcing me back to Ohio, to the one place they suspected my mother might have left something crucial from the original case. I felt sick. Everything I had lost over the past year, my house, my children, my reputation, had been orchestrated by people hunting my family for more than 3 decades. Yet my mother hadn't just left me money and the truth. She had left me a way to fight back. At the bottom of the letter was a phone number. "Call Marshal Theodore Vance with the U.S. Marshal Service. He has been waiting for this call since the day I died. Tell him you are Vincent Castellano's son and that you are ready to continue what we started." The number was written in red ink, underlined 3 times. Below it, a final note: "I'm sorry I couldn't tell you the truth while I was alive. I wanted you to have a normal life, a chance to be happy, without constantly looking over your shoulder. But I always knew this day might come. You are stronger than you know, Fletcher. You come from a line of people who don't back down, even against impossible odds. Your father would be proud of you. I know I am. Use the money wisely, get your children back, and remember that sometimes the worst events lead you exactly where you need to be." I sat on the basement floor for an hour, staring at the letter, trying to process it. My life had been a lie, not one that diminished me, but one that protected me until I was ready to face the truth. Finally, I picked up the phone and dialed Marshal Theodore Vance. He answered on the second ring, as if waiting 35 years. "Vance, Marshal Vance. This is Fletcher Morrison. My real name is Fletcher Castellano." After a long pause and deep breath, "Son, I've been waiting for this call since your mother died. Where are you?" I'm in my mother's house in Akron, next to the safe she left for me. Don't touch anything else. Don't talk to anyone. And don't leave that house. I'll be there in 4 hours. Marshal Vance arrived with 2 federal agents. He spent 6 hours cataloging everything my mother had left, photographing documents, and asking about my life in California. Your mother was one of the bravest people I ever worked with, he said as we sat at her kitchen table near midnight. She knew they would eventually track down her son, so she prepared for this day. The money, the safe combination using your birthday, even hiring investigators in California. She wanted you to find this when you needed it most. The full extent of what had happened was even worse than I imagined. The Torino crime family had been systematically targeting witnesses from my father's murder trial for decades. They'd adapted. Rather than killing witnesses directly, they compromised people close to their targets, creating chaos and financial ruin. Marshall explained that they had been working on my case for at least 5 years. They found Cordelia through her real estate connections, likely approaching her as potential clients before drawing her into their scheme. The private investigators my mother had hired documented everything, including recordings of Cordelia meeting with people tied to the Torino family, evidence of money changing hands, falsified documents, and witnesses being paid to lie about me. The gambling addiction story, the fabricated bank statements, everything had been orchestrated by the Torino crime family. Marshal Vance explained that they had used the same method on 6 other witnesses over the past 15 years. Create financial and legal chaos, destroy the person's credibility, then wait for them to return to their original location. But there was one factor the Torino family hadn't accounted for. My mother's death from natural causes 2 years earlier had triggered protocols within the U.S. Marshals Service. They had been quietly monitoring the neighborhood, waiting to see if anyone would search for the safe house in Ohio. We've had surveillance on this area for 2 years, Marshall admitted. We knew that if they forced you back here, they'd eventually act. We documented anyone showing unusual interest in this address. The next morning brought the most surprising news. Cordelia had been arrested at her Portland hotel at 6:00 a.m., along with 3 men who had been following her. She had believed she was working with private investigators to secure a better divorce settlement, unaware that they were tied to organized crime. She's agreed to testify, Marshall told me over coffee. It turns out she's a victim too. They convinced her you were hiding gambling debts and other women. They showed her fake evidence, made her scared and angry, and offered to help protect the kids and her financial future. The hardest phone call I ever made was to Quinlan and Brenna. They were staying with Cordelia's sister in Portland, confused and frightened because their mother had been arrested and no one would explain why. Dad, Quinlan's voice sounded small, almost lost. Hey buddy, I know this is confusing, but everything's going to be okay. Your mom and I both love you, and none of this is your fault. Are you really a gambling addict? Brenna asked. Mom said you stole money, and that's why we had to move. No, sweetheart. I never gambled, and I never stole anything. Some very bad people lied about me, but the police caught them. We'll be together again soon. It took 6 months to untangle everything legally. The evidence my mother's investigators had gathered, combined with Cordelia's testimony, and the federal case against the Torino organization, cleared my name entirely. The forged gambling records were exposed, the witnesses recanted, and my insurance license was reinstated with an official apology from the state board. Cordelia and I will never restore what we had. Too much damage, too many lies, too much broken trust. But we are now cooperating to help our children understand what happened. She is in therapy for the guilt of being manipulated, and I am learning to trust again. Most importantly, we got our children back. The Ohio house sold for enough to buy a smaller home in California and fund college accounts for both kids. Quinlan returned to the basketball team, and colleges are still scouting him despite the disruption to his junior year. Brenna's artwork has become more hopeful and colorful, though she still draws families surviving storms. I think of my mother daily, her sacrifices, and the courage it took to testify against murderers while living in constant vigilance for 35 years. She saved my life twice, once when I was 12, and again when I was 47. I never had the chance to thank her. The Torino case will go to trial next year, and I will testify just as my mother did all those years ago. This time I won't run afterward. This time we will finish what she started. Sometimes the worst events lead you exactly where you need to be. My mother understood that and ensured that, even from beyond the grave, she could protect her son. If this story resonated with you, share it with someone who might need to hear it. Leave a comment about a time someone in your family protected you in ways you only understood later. For more stories about ordinary people facing extraordinary circumstances, subscribe to this channel and hit the notification bell. Thanks for listening. Remember, sometimes the people who love us most are fighting battles we never see.